to finish off what we reading on this Napoleon Hill, Grow Rich, Peace of Mind. Yeah, work with me, man. We trying to get some better cameras. We already getting some better mics in the making. So, hopefully the sound better already. All right. So we're going to start back right off where we took off at. Can success consciousness be installed into a mind already filled with the record of failure? When you come to know your own mind and live your own life, you can wipe out a record of failure just as surely as you can erase the message on a tape recorder, leaving a wonderfully receptive tape or mind to receive new and better impressions. Some people have been able to do this for themselves. Others need help. I well remember a man I helped to find himself. As you will see, I got him started, and once he knew where he was going, he did the rest. This was a dead broke man just out of the army. I believe he used the army as a refuge, but eventually he was back in civilian clothes looking for a job. The mere mention of hard times seemed enough to flatten him. He was shabby. He was hungry. He was willing to settle for crumbs if only he could get them. He came to see me about finding work. At the outset, he announced, "All I want is a place to sleep and enough to eat." A place to sleep and enough to eat in a world that thrives with riches? Something prompted me to ask, why settle for a meal ticket? Why would you like to become a millionaire? He looked at me with glassy eyes, swaying. Please don't joke with me. I assure you I'm serious. Every man has some kind of assets, and every man can turn his assets into $1 million or many millions if he uses them correctly. He sighed. What do you mean by assets? I have a nickel in my pocket. Bring your mind around to the positive side, I said. And you have the most important asset you'll ever have. We'll work on that. Now let's take inventory of your skills. Sit down. We'll talk better. What did you do in the army? He had been a cook. Before going into the army, he had been a Fuller brush salesman. He was a good cook, I discovered, but obviously he had not been a good salesman. Still, he knew something about selling, and in talking to him, I discovered he still wanted to sell. At the outset, however, he had no belief he ever could become a good salesman. The memory of past failures inhibited him, and I had to help him break those self-inflicted mental blocks and see not what he had been, but what he could be. We talked for some time, and meanwhile, my own mind was busily at work. My mind was not weakened by hunger or hopelessness. There had been a time when my mind had known as much despair as his, but now I was filled with success consciousness. Questing about my uninhibited mind remembered that special new kinds of cookware were now being developed, a new kind of cookware of great benefit to the housewife, a man who could think about cooking and even demonstrate, a man who could be made into a good salesman, and there we had the winning combination. Suppose you represented a company that makes new kinds of aluminum cookware, I said. This cookware offers many advantages. It should be seen in action, then it will practically sell itself. Any housewife, for a small consideration, say some free pots or pans for her own use, should be glad to invite her neighbors in for a home cooked dinner. You cook that dinner with the special cookware, and after dinner you take orders for complete match sets. If 20 ladies are present, I'm sure you can induce half of them to purchase. Some of these would be eager to run similar dinner parties in their own homes. The business will become self-perpetuating. Sounds okay, my young soldier friend replied. But where am I going to sleep meanwhile? And where am I going to eat? And where am I going to get a few clean shirts and a new suit? Not to mention the question of where am I going to get some money or credit to get started on? Such questions are typical of the mind which does not yet know itself, and so sums up the obstacles rather than looking directly at the goal. Get yourself into the right frame of mind, I said, and you will either find what you need or find a way to do without and still achieve your goal. When your mind can truly picture a desired goal and feel success consciousness driving it toward that goal, you can win that goal. Let us put aside all other matters and investigate your state of mind. Actually, the young man was very close to having the desired positive state of mind. I waited till I was sure he had it, however. Then I said he was a good risk, and I gave him the use of our guest room and his meals. I let him use my charge account at Marshall's Fields so he could be well dressed. I guaranteed his note for his first outfit of cookware. During his first week, he cleared nearly $100 in profit. The second week, he doubled that amount. In a little while, he began to train other men and women whom he had managed. Most of all, he instilled in them the success consciousness, which now had full hold of his mind, and as they prospered, so did he. At the end of 4 years, the young man who had been so hungry and broken spirited was very far from being a millionaire. Oh, so very far from being a millionaire, was worth more than $4 million. Moreover, his newly keen and efficient mind had perfected a home demonstration selling plan, which now nets millions of dollars annually to large groups of salespeople. When the bells of heaven ring with joy, when a man finds his own mind and fills it with successful consciousness, or when another man helps him to do so, I fancy that the bells of heaven ring with joy. Here is one more soul who has broken the chains forged by his fearful imagination. Now you can see why I chose to begin this book by revealing what it means to take possession of your own mind, live your own life, find your real self that has no limitations. When you do this, you have an asset worth whatever values you choose to make it worth. Think again of what is involved in creating an independent nation. Think of ancient India with its teeming millions. Under British rule for generation after generation, think of the Mahatma Gandhi, a man who had no mercy, controlled no army, did not own a house, did not even own a pair of pants. Yet he had an asset which was greater than all the might of the British Empire, the capacity to take possession of his own mind and direct it toward purposes of his own choosing. He chose to free India, and he lived to see the achievement of his purpose. Thanks to the influence of Mahatma Gandhi, my science of personal achievement now has many millions of followers in India. Whether your goal is money, the well-being of others, or a combination of these, as well it may be, know that there is nothing beyond the power of a mind that knows itself and believes in its own capabilities. The spiritual defenses within the castle of your mind. I have purposely used the word defenses in order to call your attention to its varying meanings. A mind that is on the defensive is not an open mind. It is more likely to be a frightened mind full of excuses and evasions, and hardly capable of lifting its possessor's eyes to the far horizons of accomplishment. And speaking of spiritual defenses, then, I speak of nothing that is negative. Rather, I speak of certain areas within which one may withdraw and thus become completely oneself. Every successful person I have known has surrounded himself with these spiritual defenses in one way or another. I have adopted the system, and I find it invaluable. Here is how it works. Consider your mind to be laid out in the pattern of some medieval castles, At the center, there is a tower or keep, which is impregnable as it can be made. Going outward from the keep, you would come to a wall not so formidable, and again going outward, you would come to another wall which serves as the first line of defense. A person approaching the castle first would have to pass the outer wall. This wall of spiritual defense in your mind need not be very high. Anyone who has a legitimate excuse for entering your mind with his ideas can climb this wall. If he does not have a legitimate excuse, however, the wall discourages him. When you set up such a wall, others come to know it is there, and you give yourself a valuable protection. A person who passes the first line of defense now confronts the second line, which you may set up on certain occasions and not on others. When your mind sets up this wall, nobody may climb it unless that person has something strongly in common with you or something importantly beneficial to share with you at that moment. The inmost castle of protection is the most important of all. It is small, barely big enough to surround you, but when your mind retreats within that keep, it is removed from every outside influence. With me, only the Creator can penetrate my inmost spiritual castle. Find yours and find a source of great strength. Find yours and you find a source of great strength. Sorry about that. Here's where you can find your inmost thoughts undisturbed by outside influences. And until you find this castle, you never can know them. Here's where you can search all the values of a problem and find a solution which otherwise you might not see. Here, especially, is where your fully possessed mind reveals what can be done. And when you come out of your retreat, you know that it will be done and that you will do it. At first, you might find it necessary to retreat physically from the world into a quiet room or perhaps to some place distant from your business and from people who know you. This often is a good idea, even when you have practice in finding the most inmost privacy of your own mind, because there are many physical circumstances which break into thought. When you have several times retreated to your thick-walled keep, however, you will find you can enter it for a few seconds, even in the midst of others who are talking all around you. I have seen many successful men do this, and thus illustrate some of the power to which they owe their success. It is a great renewer of the spirit, a kind of recharge of ability and self-confidence and abiding faith. All that I say in this book is key to one supreme secret. This secret has strongly sketched in throughout this chapter. You have seen it, and already it is beginning to penetrate your subconscious mind, which never forgets. So this is just looking back on chapter 1, some of the main points. I'll go into those into a series of shorts. But once again, man, this is your boy Chuck. We read live, man. Excuse me for some of the mishaps. It's a lot going on. I got the baby car in the back, got the dogs barking. I got my little baby chickens chirping in the background. So work with me. But, we're going to be back on it later on. I'm going to drop a few shorts, basically summarizing chapter 1. Tap in, though. This your boy Chuck. We out.